Снова привет, давненько мы с вами не виделись.
Hi again, haven't seen you for a while. I'm really glad that you are still here with us
Следите за
and you're watching and following our broadcast in the course of 3 days. Final day today, and right now we're going to speak about open source, but not about the open source that we've been speaking about yesterday with Denis Koroblев, but about open source for young people,
разговаривать с
which means that we're going to speak with Alex Fedoseev, who is the president of Association of Technological Organizations and leader of projects of National Technological Initiative. Hello, Alexei.
Скажи мне, пожалуйста, про
Tell me, please, about your contest, open source contest, which you have conducted for you, my dear viewers. I'm going to tell you, I will remind you that the final of this contest is happening in the framework of Positive Hug Days. Five leaders receive the possibility of being at our event, and with the desire, you can find them in the program and you can listen to what
этого.
have they invented within this competition. Well, this competition is conducted for the first time in such a scale in Russia. I mean, Ministry of Digital participates in a lot of technological companies, positive companies which have proposed their topics. Open source is very important in different directions, not only in the info business, home devices, and smart house, and some system libraries. And participants of this contest are students and school kids. To us, this is a very important topic because right now there's a lot of people who are involved in IT, who love practical IT, they are learning modern languages, they use GitHub, but at the same time, without any understanding and deep understanding of the environment, open source understanding what is a community, open source community, what is the open license, GPLN, how these communities live, what are the complications and difficulties in these communities, and to participate in this competition, go through this experience, participation in real open source projects, on being involved in open license, getting feedback from experts, and of course, relatively speaking, in the direction of informational security, this contest looks at the results, and in other direction, we are still going to work on these results in course of May, and in the summer, we'll congratulate the winners, we'll give different prizes to them. How long did this competition take? Well, this year we have launched it within this period. After the new year, we have launched, and right now we're drawing the results with the purpose so that winners would get additional points for entering the university. But generally speaking, we assume that this contest will be launched next every year, and we're connected to the year so that students who do their diploma works could include all of this and publish it, the open license, etc. Well, can you remind me how many participants have participated this year? Well, this year we have more than 2,000 people. Mostly these were students. Mostly they were students of leading universities in IT specialties. There are school kids, and this is very cool that guys being in last grades in the school, they make projects and put them in their portfolio, which is very important for future IT specialists. Approximately more than 500 projects were submitted by our people. Right now, they are different, and because they are all on the GitHub, and they can look at it, well, they can press the buttons, they can read the information, they can see the number of stars earned at the GitHub by these projects. And right now, we do the expertise when they will get the feedback from the representative of company involved in open source in Russia.
Типа проекты.
And what type projects have been conducted by those guys? Well, different projects. There are guys who are not here for the first day. They write some libraries, they write some tools, artificial intelligence projects, some individual objectives, information security utilities. And by the way, another popular thing is games. Because some people do some games for the contents and they publish them with open source. It's interesting. And of course, generally speaking, it seems that for most of the people, this was the first attempt of getting acquainted with open source. And for us, it's a big advantage that we were able to pull this up. And why is it so important? Because together with the contest, we have launched an educational program with a lot of different people from this area. And they are telling what is this all about. They are speaking about these aspects. And we think that this experience of participation in the contest gives us good base so that we'd learn more about it. And what about educational program? program? What does it include? How it works? Well, it's very important for us to show and tell from first hand, from the side of those people who work with our companies and hold projects themselves, participate in big programs, in big communities. What is this in real life? How can we deliver our contribution into the existing projects? What difficulties are you going to see when you have to communicate and find some entrance level together with your team? If you publish a project, if you activate a license, what is a license and why is it so important? How can you make your project viable after you publish it? How can you attract people into the community? And there's a lot of questions which are related not just to technical part as programming, but also, well, many people can learn that, but there's a lot of content about it. But how can you make it operational? How can you make it working? And the social surroundings around this project. And this is the main emphasis that we're making because this is something that is missing in the market. And do you have any stories when
Разработки молодежи
developments made by young people have been collected
использоваться в
and they started being used in some real commercial or non-commercial projects?
выкладывали.
Have they been developing something? Yes, of course. You can see that top projects are really being used somewhere because they have a lot of forks and stars and GitHub from these projects. There's a lot of deployed discussions and descriptions in English. Well, it's understandable that these are students, people who already went through a certain path, and maybe our contest for them is a little bit too simple and we should do something else. But generally speaking,
Даже от школьников такие примеры есть. Хоть
we do have such examples from school kids, a lot of them. So we think that
потенциал
in this topic there is a great potential because there's a lot of projects which are done by kids in schools and universities, and many of them are ending up without any continuation. That's it. But in this case, we can get a lot of feedback if you need it for your personal portfolio. And you can give this story into somebody else's hands to keep it alive. Yes, yes, yes.
что?
Cool.
Прикольно.
Ну да. Вот
Very cool.
просто на самом деле
So
что вот
it seems that
года, потому что
the higher entrance threshold means that you have to write and publish something that you don't feel ashamed for, and it pushes you to a more detailed approach to what you do. And plus, you need to find some partners or colleagues who are going to be interested in this. And this is an important social component which helps you. What do you think? What's going to be the destiny of your
во-первых, мы зовем
project? Well, first of all, we are calling our partners to offer some internships and do something interesting. And right now in Russia, we have a problem with well-known Google sample code where you cannot be enrolled. Russian mentors and students cannot be enrolled due to known reasons. And there's a number of teams and in Russia which are interested in open source exercises which continue.
Я уверен,
And they do such proposals for the guys, and I'm confident that many winners of a contest will get such proposals because realistically you can see that people have experience and it would be very cool to involve them in our communities. That's why the winners of the contest, well, our open source teams will fight for them, to get them,
остальных, мне кажется,
work for them. Well, another one, it's a good attempt for the next year to make it even better. So there will be continuation. Yes, we will make this contest every year, and we will do it in such a way so that people will be able to show their growth in the open source from year to year. You will see the projects.
Замечательно.
Wonderful.
Готовились с вами к интервью.
When we've been preparing ourselves for the interview, when we've been speaking about topics, neighboring topics, can you tell me, please, what is open source to you? What do you invest? What do you put in the heads of young generation of people? Well, let's see. For us, open source, I will give you the quotes. First of all, it's the
цитат Линуса Торвальдса, это
code.
по гамбургскому счету то, что
According to Hamburg account, this is something that you've done because when we see presentations of projects of students, happy startup presentations, all they want to do is a totally different. Before you have done something and before you show that it works, nobody's interested in you. And I think this is something that's missing on the side of modern, fashionable, startup-oriented young teams because you still have to do it. You don't just speak about it. It's a good shot, which everybody should go through, every specialist. And the second thing, It's the global community, irrespectively to all the difficulties that we're facing right now globally. I'm confident that international cooperation will be kept, maybe transformed, and we'll have an experience of cooperation with people from India, Brazil, United States. It doesn't matter which country, but still, it will be getting out of your own capsule. It's going to be a global engineering world. And I think this is also an important thing which is available in the science. And it's important for us to have it in engineering as well. Because engineering, this is something which develops continuously. And we have to be on the front lines. We have to adopt the best. And we have to show that we are cool in certain areas. And something is to be done with us. Out of everything that you tell us, I see, I hear that engineering cannot develop or live outside of context. We all change our conditions at a certain moment of time. So what has changed? Yes, we've been speaking a lot about what was changing in informational security, in IT, what new rules of the game do we have, what do we expect, but what has changed about open source? Well, open source, as any other sphere, is very complicated, thin spheres of human relations. Of course, they been under serious impact, and in many communities, especially in communities with big number of Russian speaking or maybe related to Russian people with some Russian background, they are suffering right now. They feel certain difficulties. Some of them are breaking up in pieces, but nevertheless, they are thinking and discussing whatever happens. And it seems that for the whole open source, global open source, it's a serious challenge. Will it happen that this movement will keep its globality? Will it keep the ideals that, well, put in a foundation of for freedoms, of Nick Raymond's freedoms, or some values that were adopted by global engineering community, which is important to everybody? I think that most likely this is a stage of growing when engineers cannot hide in their engineering world, but they have to understand that the world is much more complicated. So in the course of many years, more than 20 years, I participated in open source, and I believe that this is possible. This can be overcome just because there is a value of unification, the value for which people get united, the value for which the common existence of people can become better in the end run. You know, if speaking roughly, highly moral. Not many people like to speak about it. But it's the part of the open source. Without it, it wouldn't fly. And people will find these points of connection which will make it survive, and this will continue. So what do you think, commercialization? Can this topic be commercialized? Well, this is a holy grail to which everybody is trying to approach, and we will have to do that because in Russia, we don't have so much resources to develop something for the sake of development. We will have to look at things pragmatically, and open source as a certain stage from which you begin when you make your products. I think this is very important. And when we are going to speak about the expert, we have to speak about it. We shouldn't be closed in ourselves. So open source in the current situation in Russia is an important part of expert, because if you're going to show in India, Brazil, or any other country, if you will show your products, and if you will show it open parts which can easily be replaced, trusted, substituted, this will always be an additional point to your competitive advantage. And this is something that should be one part of your product, one of the parts of your product. Okay, I understand. Are there any trends, ideas in open source for the next 5 years? Well, we need to survive through this crisis, not only us, but open source as a community. And I believe that one of the most interesting trends, which is not new, but stronger and stronger, it's when open source goes into others, this open hopper, some open stories in the arts, and when the open source story becomes a part of a common cultural context, like Wikipedia. So it becomes into some concept, yes, a general cultural norm when a person on the street will know that Wikipedia is not just encyclopedia with where you can find anything, but it's encyclopedia which is written together where you can put your own input as well. These things are coming to the market. We see how crowdfunding and crowdsourcing in the science have appeared, citizen science and many other events which have general roots coming to the open source as the first conduct. And I believe that it will penetrate into different life spheres inevitably, and we'll be able to see new things like sharing of some interesting things, concept sharing and other things. I believe it. Well, the fantastic option. Can you describe it? Well, the most fantastic option, I think it consists of the fact that we finally will come to the situation that knowledge which humanity accumulates will become commonly accessible. The science which exists right now, which have been encapsulated into separate magazines, will be disclosed and opened, and we will see new epoch of revitalization where people start exchanging knowledge respectively to who has patented what. It's hard. So the science and exchange of the knowledge, I don't understand the idea because there are people of science who understand what they are writing about, they understand what they're doing, and they're not coming from the outer space. It takes them a lot of time to come to this and tell something to the world. But in my concept, the open source story comes from the following. You inform me that according to all the scientific rules, the Earth is round as a ball, but I have the right to go to your works and correct them and say, no, the Earth is flat and it has three elephants under it. Yeah, I understand that I'm oversimplifying it. But reproducibility and openness is very important here. There is another aspect which is closer to open source engineering in the wider sense of this word, some translation into masses. So there is a certain knowledge of elites, and there are scientists who've disclosed it, and there's a popular knowledge that we see in Wikipedia, and there's a certain gap between them. And there could be another concept from the security point of view. CT trust, which is like open source cryptography, where roughly speaking, you trust your guy, this guy trusts another guy, and we build transit trust networks, and we'll get it in knowledge system when I trust this professor because he was teaching me, and through me, my friend also trusts this professor, and to this network of trust. And these are not available in a popular space. But it's an important direction where open source is going to help people. This is a new journalistics, this is a new science based on other principles, so more horizontal, because open source is about horizontal relations. Okay, thank you very much, Alexei. So I think that in the last 3 days we've discussed open source from different positions. So I do hope that your contest next year will have more participants. At least, well, I don't see how much more can be added to it. So I wish you success to you and your students, and success in everything you do. And don't switch off. Right now, we're going to see the continuation, and maybe we are going to speak about contests, but we are not going to speak about open source. Don't switch off.